The steady drone of ceiling fans in the briefing room was abruptly broken by sharp bursts of laughter. Sarah Chen paused at the entrance, a fine layer of desert dust still clinging to her plain jacket. 5 feet, 4 inches tall and weighing 125 pounds, her gaze swept across the room. Detailed tactical maps covered every wall, surrounded by a dozen snipers in their combat uniforms, and a major whose brand-new rank symbols glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Hey, who let a civilian in here?" Jake Morrison, a muscular man standing 6 feet, 2 inches tall and weighing 240 pounds, swiveled to face the security guard by the door. "This room is restricted." A fresh wave of chuckles spread through the men. "Maybe she's lost, looking for the main office," someone yelled. Sarah remained silent. She walked directly to the large meeting table and carefully placed a slim folder on its surface, each movement precise and purposeful. Major Bradford lifted an eyebrow. "Ma'am, I'm not sure who approved your entry, but this is an operations briefing. Please, if you would." "Not ma'am," Sarah corrected, her voice a quiet murmur. The laughter in the room intensified. Captain Linda Pierce, the intelligence officer, shook her head with clear annoyance. "Wonderful. Another incident waiting to happen." Jake stood with his arms folded, his biceps as thick as Sarah's calves. "Listen, sweetheart, I don't know what you've been told, but Navy SEAL snipers aren't exactly. Your map is wrong." Sarah pointed at the large tactical display on the wall, her voice still calm. "The wind calculations are off by 0.3 meters per second at this altitude. That's a critical error at 1,200 meters. A tense 3 seconds of silence stretched across the room. Then Jake exploded with laughter. "Oh, now she's a ballistics expert." But Sergeant Dave Patterson, known to everyone as Numbers for his precision, squinted at the map. His mouth tightened into a grim line. Sarah simply pulled out a chair and sat down. "What time does the briefing begin?" Major Bradford glanced at his watch, then at her, then back at his watch again. "Right now, but I need to see your authorization first." The door suddenly swung open. Colonel Patricia Moss entered. "Everyone, take a seat," she commanded. "We have a high-priority target, and a serious problem." The sound of chairs scraping filled the room as everyone quickly found their places. Sarah remained motionless, her hands resting calmly on the table, her posture relaxed but somehow poised for action. Jake slumped into the chair opposite her, still wearing a smirk. Captain Pierce took her place at the head of the table next to the colonel, her tablet already on and glowing. Colonel Moss activated the projector screen. An aerial view appeared, a fortified compound nestled in rugged rocky land, its walls strengthened with sandbags, guard towers standing at each corner. "This is our objective." The enemy commander, codenamed Havoc, real name Khalid Hassan, escaped military prison 3 weeks ago, Moss explained. "Intelligence confirms he's operating from this site, about 40 kilometers northeast of our current location." Jake leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "What's the capture priority?" "Eliminate or apprehend." "Apprehend if possible," Moss replied. "He holds critical information about a network we've been trying to dismantle for 2 years, but he won't come willingly. He knows we're searching for him." She advanced to the next slide. A blurry photo showed a man in his 40s with a rugged face and shrewd, calculating eyes. "Havoc has eliminated 3 Allied patrols in the past month. 17 innocent people have died in 2 separate attacks. He is becoming more aggressive." Sarah's fingers began a quiet, rhythmic tapping on the table, a precise beat like a military cadence. No one seemed to notice except Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez, seated 2 chairs away. Rodriguez watched Sarah's hand, then glanced at her face. Sarah's expression remained utterly calm. "The problem," Colonel Moss continued, "is that he commands an exceptionally skilled counter-sniper team. They eliminated one of our observation posts last week. Corporal Jenkins didn't return home." A somber atmosphere filled the room. Jenkins had been well-liked, highly capable and cautious. If they could get him, this enemy was truly dangerous. Numbers spoke up, his voice calm and precise. "What's the typical engagement range for the main Between 800 and 1,400 meters depending on where we can set up observation without being spotted," Moss explained, gesturing at the terrain map. "But that's a secondary issue. Our main challenge is getting a team into position without them detecting us. They possess early warning systems, civilian lookouts in nearby villages, and they are extremely suspicious. Moss elaborated. One mistake, and Havoc vanishes into the mountains. We won't find him again. Jake thumped the table. Then we strike hard and fast. A full-scale assault before they can react. Captain Pierce interjected sharply. That approach got Jenkins killed. Morrison. We require precision, not brute force. I advocate for tactical swiftness. Jake retorted. Got a better plan. Before Pierce could answer, Sarah spoke. The elevation data on your map is incorrect. Every head in the room turned. Major Bradford frowned. Excuse me? Sarah rose and walked to the large map on the wall. She traced a finger along the contour line around the target compound. These elevation markers show the compound at 400 meters above sea level. She stated, but yesterday's barometric pressure readings from the weather report indicate an atmospheric density consistent with 520 meters of elevation at that specific spot. Numbers immediately pulled out his tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. The room waited in tense silence. After 30 seconds he looked up. She's right. There's a mismatch between the survey data and the current atmospheric conditions. The compound is actually at 5. So what? Jake challenged. It's only 100 meters. We can adjust. 120 meters, Sarah calmly corrected. At a 1,1400 meter engagement distance, with the current wind patterns and temperature variations, that's a 4-meter difference in an elevation adjustment. Combined with the inaccurate wind calculation I previously mentioned, your shot would be off by 8 inches. At that distance, 8 inches is the difference between a direct hit to the head and a complete miss. The room had fallen into absolute silence. Even the faint radio chatter from nearby operations seemed to vanish. Numbers stared intently at his tablet, furiously rerunning calculations. He then looked up at Sarah with a blend of confusion and reluctant admiration. How did you determine atmospheric density from a weather report? Barometric pressure at base is 30.2 inches of mercury. Temperature at 1600 hours was 94 degrees. The standard lapse rate for this area is 3.5 degrees per 1,000 feet. Basic math, Sarah replied. She returned to her seat, her movements smooth and controlled, possessing the bearing of a soldier despite her civilian clothes. Major Bradford leaned back, scrutinizing her. Who exactly are you? Before Sarah could answer, Colonel Moss stepped in. Chief Warrant Officer Myers is performing a database search. We should have results in 10 minutes. Until then, the briefing continues. Jake wasn't ready to drop the issue. You also claimed the wind calculation was wrong. Prove it. Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the map. The current wind at base level is gusting between 5 and 12 knots from the northwest, she began. However, the compound is situated in a valley with ridges extending northeast. These ridges create a Venturi effect, increasing wind speed through that gap by roughly. Your spotter notes indicate you're accounting for a steady 10-knot wind. In reality, at the compound, the wind will be 14 to 17 knots, both variable and gusty. Your point of impact will drift right by approximately 0.3 meters per second beyond your current correction. Numbers was typing frantically. Temperature inversion at altitude. Ridge configuration causing acceleration. Variable wind calculation. He stopped typing, his face visibly paling. She's absolutely correct. Our entire firing solution is compromised. Jake opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again, stammering. That's impossible. You can't just look at a map and, it's terrain analysis, Sarah stated simply, combined with meteorological data and ballistic mathematics. Standard pre-mission planning. Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but firm. A 5-inch error at 1400 meters. If we had proceeded with the current plan, we would have missed. Numbers completed, or worse, wounded the target and exposed our position to his counter-sniper team. Captain Pierce suddenly rose. This is absurd. She just walks in off the street, and suddenly she's a ballistics expert. Major, this woman doesn't even have visible security clearance. Why are we even considering this? Because she just salvaged your mission, Lieutenant Rodriguez stated, meeting Pierce's intense gaze without flinching. Or undermined it, Pierce retorted. How can we be sure she isn't giving us false information? Perhaps she's working for Havoc. A civilian consultant, no military demeanor, shows up precisely when we're strategizing an operation. Pierce turned to Colonel Moss. Ma'am, with all due respect, this constitutes a security violation. Colonel Moss glanced at her watch. Myers should have that database report in 5 minutes. We'll know exactly who she is then. She looked at Sarah. Until then you are welcome to observe, but do not intervene further. Sarah gave a single nod. The gesture was subtle, yet it conveyed a powerful acknowledgement without any hint of submission. The briefing continued. Moss outlined the schedule. Insertion at 0200 hours, 4 days from now. 3 teams. Assault, Overwatch and a quick reaction force. Jake would command the sniper unit. Numbers would manage all calculations. Captain Pierce would coordinate intelligence and communications from the Tactical Operations Center. Throughout the explanation, Sarah remained perfectly still, but Rodriguez observed subtle details. The way Sarah's eyes constantly scanned the room, silently noting positions and individuals. The unwavering steadiness of her breathing, even when Pierce directed another sharp, accusing remark her way. The faint calluses visible on her fingertips when her hands were folded. Not the soft hands of someone confined to a desk. Before the next phase of the briefing could begin, a palpable tension settled over the room. The men who had laughed at Sarah moments earlier found themselves caught in a silent, uncomfortable moment of reflection. The casual dismissal had evaporated, replaced by a growing unease. This was not just about military strategy, it was about confronting deeply held assumptions about who belonged in a combat zone. And the men present were on the verge of learning a lesson they would never forget. The door opened, and Specialist Carlos Martinez entered, carrying newly updated satellite imagery. He distributed the printouts around the table. As he passed Sarah, she accepted hers with a quiet thank you, a natural politeness that felt strikingly precise, almost military. Jake picked up his copy, studied it carefully, then looked at Sarah. So what's your background? Rand Corporation defense contractor, some think tank that's never seen real combat. Does it matter? Sarah asked calmly. Yes, it matters, Jake replied, his tone shifting from dismissive mockery to something sharper, more serious. Real operations aren't academic exercises. People die when theoreticians play soldier. I've been doing this for 12 years, he continued. I've lost friends because someone behind a desk made poor decisions. So, excuse me if I'm skeptical of civilians who believe they know better. That's understandable, Sarah said. Her simple acknowledgement seemed to catch Jake off guard. Corporal Mike Chen, seated at the far end of the table, leaned over to whisper to the person beside him. Probably just looked up ballistics last night. Wants to show off. The whisper carried clearly across the room. Sarah heard it, and so did everyone else. She showed no reaction. Major Bradford spread his hands flat on the table. All right, that's enough. We have 4 days to perfect this plan. Morrison, take your sniper team to the range this afternoon. I want updated zero confirmations from everyone. Numbers. Recalculate the entire firing solution using the corrected elevation and wind data. Pierce, confirm all intelligence concerning Havoc's security measures. Rodriguez, coordinate with aerial surveillance for live weather monitoring. Pierce then pointed towards Sarah. Bradford paused. She stays until we confirm her credentials. With all due respect, sir, that's absurd. Pierce protested. We are discussing highly classified operations. She could be recording everything right now. Then we will address it if the database check comes back negative. Bradford stated firmly. Until then, she has identified the most critical flaw in our planning. I'm not overlooking that. Jake pushed his chair back and stood up. Fine. But if she's so brilliant, she can join us at the range. Prove these ballistic skills aren't just theoretical. He looked at Sarah, a clear challenge in his eyes. Unless you'd prefer to stay here, where it's safe. The room held its breath. Sarah rose, her movements unhurried. The range sounds appropriate. I should familiarize myself with the local environment. A flicker of surprise crossed Jake's face. He had expected her to back down. Pierce looked annoyed. Numbers, however, appeared intrigued. Rodriguez tried to hide a smile. Colonel Moss checked her watch once more. Morrison, take anyone who wishes to go. Rodriguez, You're with me to delve deeper into the intelligence data. Everyone else dismissed. The group dispersed. Chairs scraping, voices rising in casual conversation. Jake headed for the door, signaling for his team to follow. Sarah moved to join them, but Captain Pierce stepped directly into her path. "Let me make something clear," Pierce said, her voice low enough for only Sarah and Rodriguez to hear. "I earned my place here. I fought for every bit of respect in a profession that doesn't easily accept women, and I will not allow some civilian consultant to waltz in and compromise that credibility. Whatever charade you're putting on, I will expose it." Sarah met her gaze, her expression unreadable. "I'm not playing any games, Captain." "We'll see," Pierce retorted, brushing past her, tablet clutched tightly to her chest like a shield. Rodriguez waited until Pierce was out of earshot before speaking. "Don't take it personally. She's fiercely protective of female personnel. She believes every woman's presence in this environment reflects on all of us." "I understand," Sarah said quietly. "Do you?" Rodriguez studied her. "Because I'm beginning to suspect you understand far more than you reveal." Sarah offered no response. Instead, she followed Jake's team out into the blazing Middle Eastern sunlight. The firing range stretched across 500 meters of open desert, featuring 8 marked lanes and an observation tower at the far end. Heat radiated off the sand, blurring distances. The distinct scent of gun oil and burned earth hung heavy in the air. Master Sergeant Frank Stone, the range master, stood near the firing line, wiping his hands with a cloth. He looked up as Jake's group approached, his eyes immediately fixated on Sarah's civilian attire. "Morrison, are you bringing new recruits to my range now?" "Something like that," Jake mumbled. He gestured toward the weapon racks. "Grab an M4, let's see what you're actually capable of." Sarah chose a rifle and accepted it with both hands. What unfolded next happened in absolute silence. Her movements so fluid they appeared choreographed, yet entirely natural. Field strip. 14 seconds. The bolt, firing pin and buffer spring were all laid out in perfect sequence. She never once looked down. Her hands moved with mechanical accuracy, muscle memory so deeply ingrained it bypassed conscious thought. The chatter around her ceased entirely. Sergeant Williams, known as Pops, a retired SEAL now leading advanced training, straightened up from where he'd been leaning against the tower. His eyes narrowed, following her every move. Numbers pulled out his phone and activated the stopwatch. 14 seconds flat. The current team record is 16. Jake forced a laugh, but it sounded empty. "A parlor trick. Many people can disassemble a rifle quickly. Shooting is a different matter." Sarah reassembled the weapon, loaded a round and checked the safety, all with the same efficient precision. She turned to Stone. "Permission to fire, Master Sergeant." The formal request, the correct title, the tone of her voice, something shifted in Stone's expression. "Granted." Lane 4, Jake set up a target 500 meters away, the standard qualification distance. "Let's begin simply. 5 rounds, standing position. Take your time." Sarah approached the firing line and adjusted her posture. Her weight was balanced, feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent. She raised the rifle, settling it against her shoulder with the familiar ease of someone who had done this 10,000 times. No fidgeting, no unnecessary movements. The first shot cracked across the range. She didn't move, except to breathe slow, controlled, a perfect respiratory pause at the natural hold. Second shot, third, fourth, fifth, precisely 4 seconds between each round. No scope adjustment, no stance correction needed. Stone raised his binoculars, intently studied the target, then slowly lowered them. 5 rounds, 5-inch grouping, dead center mass. The declaration hung heavy in the desert air. Captain Pierce, who had followed the group out to the range, crossed her arms. "Adequate for controlled conditions." Sarah ejected the magazine, visually confirmed the bolt was locked back, and physically cleared the weapon. She turned and offered the rifle to Jake. The barrel pointed safely down and away. Perfect clearing procedure. Impeccable military protocol. She must have practiced for today. Corporal Chen whispered to the shooter beside him. Knew this was coming. Rodriguez, standing near the tower, spoke up. "A 5-inch group at 500 meters is extraordinary, not merely adequate. That's shooting at a competitive level." Jake took the rifle and set it aside. "All right,
So you can hit a static target in ideal weather. Real missions don't operate like that. He walked to the weapon rack and returned with something substantially larger. A Barrett M82 50 caliber rifle, 30 pounds of weapon, built for brutal recoil and extreme long-range engagement.
Let's see how you manage this. Sarah's eyes flickered, not with apprehension but with clear recognition. She reached for the enormous rifle, accepting its considerable weight. Her stance automatically adjusted into a load-bearing position, her body perfectly aligned to absorb the recoil. No hesitation, no uncertainty. Stone moved the target out to 1,000 meters. "Morrison, half our team hasn't achieved a first-round hit at that distance," Stone remarked. "I know," Jake replied, his gaze fixed on Sarah. The range grew silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Sarah settled behind the rifle, her breathing slowing. Her trigger finger placement was textbook perfect. The pad of the finger, not the joint, applying straight back pressure. She took her time. 30 seconds passed. Then a full minute. She was mentally processing wind elevation, temperature, humidity, the Coriolis effect, spin drift, all the complex variables that transformed theoretical ballistics into actual rounds impacting the target. Without a word, without using any tools beyond her keen observation and immense knowledge, she made her subtle adjustments. The shot roared across the desert like a physical impact. The Barrett's muzzle brake redirected the intense blast and gas, yet the powerful weapon still recoiled violently. Sarah absorbed the impact, maintaining her steady position, her eye fixed on the target through the scope. Stone immediately raised his binoculars. He stared for 3 prolonged seconds. Then he slowly lowered them, looking at Sarah with an expression bordering on utter disbelief. Perfect center, dead center. First round. A profound silence enveloped the range. Someone coughed softly. Specialist Martinez pulled out his phone, started to lift it, then caught Rodriguez's sharp, warning glance and quickly put it away. Major Bradford's voice crackled over the radio from the observation tower. "Stone, confirm that." "Confirmed, sir. First round hit at 1,000 meters. Perfect center mass from the tower." Bradford didn't respond immediately. When he finally did, his voice was distinctly altered. "Who is that shooter?" Stone glanced at Sarah, then keyed his radio. "The civilian consultants, sir." Chen. Another lengthy pause. "Rodriguez. Send someone to operations. Tell Myers I want that database report now. Not in 5 minutes. Now." Sarah stood, having safely handled the weapon. She began clearing it with the same meticulous precision. Her expression had not wavered throughout the entire demonstration. No pride, no satisfaction, no demand for recognition, just pure competence displayed without a single word of commentary. Jake stared at the weapon, then at the target, then at Sarah. How did you? Basic ballistics," Sarah said quietly, handing him the cleared rifle. "The same principles as the map correction. Math doesn't change based on distance." Numbers shook his head. "No, that's expert-level calculation. Most snipers need a calculator and 3 minutes to work out that solution. You did it in 90 seconds in your head. The first time you've touched that rifle in this environment." Williams approached Sarah, studying her with the careful attention of someone who recognized a deeply familiar skill. "What unit did you say you were with?" "I didn't," Sarah replied simply. "Right." Williams folded his arms, revealing tattoos beneath his rolled sleeves, a Navy anchor, a SEAL trident, dates and coordinates from past deployments. "But you were with someone. That's not civilian shooting. That's operational level performance." Sarah then retrieved a robust satellite communicator from her pocket, the kind designed to function in the most isolated regions of the world where cell service was non-existent. In environments where lives hinged on maintaining contact, military-grade communication devices like this were critical lifelines. With their encrypted channels, GPS tracking and battery life lasting weeks instead of hours, these units truly determined the success or catastrophic failure of a mission. This technology, which kept operators connected when all other systems failed, was more than mere equipment. It was essential survival infrastructure, often costing less than many people spent on their everyday smartphones. She checked the screen, saw no messages, and returned it to her pocket without a word. The movement was casual, but Williams noticed. Numbers did too. Standard civilian phones had no signal out here, but that specific model, that precise device configuration, was issued only to personnel operating in highly restricted zones, places where conventional communication systems were either absent or unreliable. The group walked back toward the main compound, their conversation subdued. The light-hearted mockery from earlier had vanished, replaced by awkward questions no one quite knew how to voice. Sarah walked slightly separate from the group, neither leading nor following, simply existing. They entered the Tactical Operations Center, a climate-controlled space brimming with computers, radio equipment, satellite feeds, and large digital map displays. The temperature inside was a full 20 degrees cooler than the scorching desert outside. Screens glowed with live data, drone footage unfolding weather patterns, intelligence reports, and personnel tracking information. Major Bradford stood near the main display, his hands clasped behind his back. He turned as they entered. Chen, a word. Sarah, the others hesitated, unsure whether to remain or leave. Bradford made the decision for them. Everyone else, I need the room clear. Jake began to protest. Sir, if this concerns the operation, it involves clearance and need to know. Bradford cut him off sharply, which means you'll discover what you need to know when I decide you need to know it. Out. They filed out, Jake casting one last bewildered glance at Sarah before the door closed. Bradford studied her for a long moment. Lieutenant Rodriguez is currently conducting a thorough background check on you. Chief Myers has searched every database available to us, but I'm going to ask you directly, who are you? What did the database reveal? Sarah inquired. That's precisely what worries me. It shows you possess top-secret clearance with special compartmented information access. Yet when Myers attempted to access your actual file, he was denied. Tier 1 clearance was required. Do you understand what that implies? Yes. Then you comprehend why I'm asking. We have perhaps a dozen individuals on this entire base with that level of clearance, and every one of them is a high-ranking officer or intelligence expert managing top-secret programs. Bradford moved closer, lowering his voice. You simply walk in here as a civilian consultant, no uniform, no visible identification, and within 30 minutes, you've corrected our mission plan and executed shots that 99% of trained military snipers couldn't achieve. So I'll ask again, who are you? Before Sarah could respond, an alarm shrieked through the operations center. Red lights flashed everywhere. Personnel scrambled to their stations. Someone shouted, incoming, incoming. The first mortar round struck 200 meters outside the perimeter. The impact vibrated through the building's foundation. Dust sifted down from the ceiling tiles. Base defense. This is 2OC. Bradford barked into his radio. Report. Multiple mortars, sir, originating from north-north. Estimated range. The second impact cut off the transmission, closer this time at 100. They were walking their fire, adjusting their aim based on where the previous rounds hit. The 2OC erupted into organized chaos. Personnel rushed to their posts, activating defensive systems, coordinating counter-battery radar and alerting quick reaction forces. Bradford moved to the main tactical display, attempting to direct the response. Sarah moved even faster. She strode to the digital map, her hands already manipulating the controls, marking positions without waiting for approval or permission. Her fingers flew across the touchscreen, driven by muscle memory honed over thousands of hours in precisely this kind of crisis. Chen, step away from. Bradford started. Defensive positions Alpha through Delta. Sarah's voice, now completely transformed, cut through the den. It was no longer soft or quiet, but a commanding tone that sliced through the chaos like a sharp blade. Counter-battery radar to 090. Now, 3 specialists instinctively began to obey, then paused, momentarily confused about taking orders from a civilian. But the commands were accurate, vital, and delivered with such absolute certainty that instinct overrode established protocol. Numbers sprinted to a computer terminal, bringing up trajectory calculations. Firing origin is 1,300 meters, Sarah stated, without ever looking away from the display. Elevation 45 meters per second. Wind correction 2 degrees. Deploy counter-sniper team to Building 7, 3rd floor east window. Clear line of sight to firing position. Bradford stared in astonishment.
Numbers verified her calculations against the computer's analysis. Sir, she's precisely correct. How is that possible? The third mortar struck 50 meters from the dining facility. The blast wave vibrated the windows. Someone yelled, "The DFAC is still at full capacity. The lunch shift hasn't cleared out. A storm front is moving in from the west." Sarah continued, her eyes tracking weather data on one of the secondary screens. "They'll fire one more round to adjust, then rapid fire before visibility drops. Evacuate the DFAC. You have 30 seconds. Bradford paused for a critical moment. A split second where years of training and military hierarchy clashed with raw instinct and urgent necessity. Then he activated the base-wide radio. "All personnel evacuate DFAC immediately. This is not a drill. Evacuate now." People ran. Soldiers streamed out of the dining facility, sprinting towards reinforced shelters. 20 seconds, 25, 30. The fourth mortar round screamed down. It was a direct hit on the DFAC. The building's roof collapsed inward, its walls buckling, structural integrity completely compromised. If anyone had remained inside, they would have been killed. But the building was empty. Every single person out, 0 casualties. The entire TOC turned to Sarah, no longer with scorn, doubt, or dismissal, but with something entirely different. A profound recognition of competence under extreme pressure. An acknowledgement of someone who had just saved lives through sheer knowledge and decisive action. Colonel Moss appeared in the doorway, slightly breathless from her sprint from the adjacent building. "Casualties 0, ma'am," Bradford reported. "Structures destroyed, but full evacuation was completed in time." Moss looked at the collapsed building visible through the window, then at the tactical display showing Sarah's defensive deployments, then finally at Sarah herself. "In time, because someone predicted the impact point." "Who made that call?" "Chen did," Bradford replied, "along with the counter-battery deployment that is currently engaging the mortar team." As if on cue, radio chatter crackled through the speakers. "This is Overwatch 7. Mortar team engaged and neutralized. 3 enemy killed in action. Mortar tube destroyed." "How in the world did you know they were there?" Bradford asked Sarah. "Terrain analysis and predictive targeting," Sarah explained, her voice having returned to its earlier quiet tone now that the immediate crisis had passed. "They required a clear line of sight to the base and protection from counter-fire. Building 7 offered the optimal position for interdiction, based on their approach vector and weapon characteristics." Lieutenant Rodriguez entered, carrying a tablet, Lieutenant Myers right behind her. Both looked visibly shaken, not from the attack, but from what they had discovered in the database. "Major," Rodriguez said cautiously, "you need to see this." Bradford took the tablet. His eyes widened. He scrolled down, reading, then scrolled back up as if disbelieving what he had just seen. The color drained from his face. "Sir," Numbers asked, concerned, "what is it?" Bradford looked up at Sarah, then at Colonel Moss, then back at Sarah. "Her file, it's classified at the highest level, but they granted emergency partial declassification due to the current operational situation." He paused. "Moss, you truly need to see this." Moss took the tablet, her expression shifting through surprise, shock, and something bordering on reverence. "My word, ma'am," Rodriguez urged her. Moss turned the tablet so everyone in the TOC could see. The screen displayed a sequence of images. The first image was a redacted photograph of Middle Eastern mountain terrain from 2 years ago. The second showed a sniper position, an elevated overlook, a weapon aimed at a valley below. The third image revealed the target in crosshairs, his face clearly visible. The enemy commander, Khalid Hassan, known as Havoc, hands raised in surrender, clutching a photograph of a young girl. The fourth image showed the same scene from a different angle, the target on his knees, surrounded by Allied forces, being taken into custody alive. Text scrolled beneath these images. Operation Sandstorm, August 12. High-value target captured alive. Intelligence obtained. Prevented coordinated attacks on coalition forces. Estimated 200 lives saved. Numbers read the text aloud, his voice fading to a whisper by the end. Operation Sandstorm. I studied that in advanced tactics. The sniper who made that shot was legendary. Perfect positioning, over 1,000-meter range, took the capture shot instead of the kill shot under direct fire. saved the entire operation because the HVT's intelligence led to the dismantling of 7 terrorist cells. Captain Pierce, who had returned during the mortar attack, stared at the screen. I wrote a paper on that operation in intelligence school. It redefined doctrine on hostage rescue and high-value target apprehension. The sniper's identity was classified. No one knew who it was. She trailed off, her gaze now fixed on Sarah. The database continued to load. The next entry appeared. Operator call sign, Fan. Jake, who had forced his way back into the TOC during the attack, went completely rigid. Phantom. The Phantom. More data appeared. Confirmed neutralizations. 89. Longest shot 2847 meters. Silver star. Bronze star with valor. 3 purple hearts. The room had fallen into absolute silence. Even the faint hum of computers seemed muted. Everyone stared, first at the screen, then at Sarah, then back at the screen, struggling to reconcile the small, quiet woman in civilian clothes with the legendary operator, whose feats were case studies, whose call sign was whispered with reverence in sniper courses across every military branch. Martinez, standing by the door, pulled out his phone again. This time Rodriguez didn't stop him. This was history unfolding. This was witnessing something truly extraordinary. Williams stepped forward, snapped to attention, and delivered a perfect parade ground salute. "Chief," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "permission to say, it's an honor." Sarah returned the salute with equally precise form. "Permission granted, and it's just Sarah, Sergeant. I'm not active duty anymore." "The hell you're not," Williams retorted. "You just commanded this entire counter-battery operation as if you'd never left." Jake Morrison still hadn't moved. His face cycled through a series of expressions: confusion, dawning realization, profound horror, and deep shame. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I called you sweetheart. I told you SEAL snipers weren't." Oh my God. He actually sat down, burying his face in his hands. "I am the biggest fool in the entire military." Numbers simply continued to stare at the statistics on the screen. 89 confirmed. Phantom. It really is. I've read every declassified after-action report. Your ballistic calculations established new records. Your terrain analysis is now taught in military schools, and I questioned whether you could even do basic arithmetic. Captain Pierce stood rigid, her professional composure visibly cracked. "I told you that you were undermining female credibility. I accused you of being a security risk." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "You are everything I claimed to be fighting for, and I couldn't see it because I was too preoccupied with protecting my own insecurity." The database loaded one final image. Sarah, in full tactical gear, with face paint and a rifle, surrounded by her team. The photograph's quality was poor, intentionally degraded for security, but the SEAL trident was clearly visible on her uniform. So was the Red Squadron patch. Chen, Sarah, rank, Chief Petty Officer, retired. SEAL Team 3, Red Squadron. Colonel Moss carefully placed the tablet down as if it were fragile. "Chief Chen, I believe we need to have a very different conversation than the one I had planned for this morning." Sarah nodded. "Yes, ma'am. But first, we should discuss the operation against Havoc." "Why?" Bradford asked. "You're retired. You don't have to." "I do," Sarah quietly interrupted, "because Khalid Hassan, Havoc, is the man in those photos. The one I captured 2 years ago. The one I spared because he surrendered, because he showed me his daughter's picture, because even amidst war, humanity matters." She paused, and for the first time genuine emotion showed on her face. Pain, deep regret, and resolute determination. He escaped prison 3 weeks ago. Since then he's murdered 17 civilians, including an entire family in a village that assisted us during that initial operation. The mercy I extended to him was the right decision at the time. The intelligence he provided saved lives, but he has betrayed that mercy. He has betrayed the opportunity he was given. Sarah looked directly at Colonel Moss. "I understand how he thinks. I know his methods, his tactics, his psychological profile. I spent 6 months analyzing him before that mission. And if you intend to capture him again, if you aim to stop him before more people die, you require me on this operation." The silence in the room stretched taut. Then, Moss slowly nodded. Major Bradford, Moss announced. I am placing Chief Chen in tactical command of the Havoc operation. Full authority. Does anyone have an objection? No one spoke. Even Pierce slowly shook her head. Good, Moss said. Chen, you will have every resource you require. Morrison, Patterson, Pierce, you are reassigned to serve under her command. Rodriguez, coordinate logistics. Williams, I want you as senior advisor, given your SEAL experience. Ma'am, Jake said, standing rigidly. Before we proceed, Chief, I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately express. My behavior was unprofessional, disrespectful, and utterly inexcusable. I formally request permission to be removed from this team. Sarah studied him for a moment. Denied, but I need your unique skills. Morrison, you are an exceptional sniper. Your fundamentals are solid, but even more than that, I require your respect. Do I have it? Jake snapped to attention. You do, ma'am. Absolutely. Then that's sufficient. Help me plan this operation. She turned to numbers. Patterson, every calculation you questioned, every correction I made, I need you to meticulously review the entire mission profile with me. 2 minds are superior to 1, and your precision is an invaluable asset. Numbers nodded, a hint of profound gratitude in his expression. Yes, Chief, I would be honored. Pierce, Captain, you understand the intelligence framework better than anyone. I will require your expertise in coordinating information flow and communication security during the mission. Pierce straightened her posture. You will have it, Chief. And I formally apologize. My conduct was a direct contradiction of everything I claimed to advocate for. Accepted, Sarah said simply. Now, let's get to work. Havoc isn't going to wait for us to resolve our internal conflicts. We have 4 days, and we require a completely overhauled operation plan. She moved to the main tactical display, beginning to access terrain data, satellite imagery, and prevailing weather patterns. The others gathered around her, no longer doubtful, no longer dismissive, but attentive and eager to learn from someone whose proven experience spoke volumes beyond any formal credential. First, Sarah began, marking positions on the map. We must understand that the compound presented in the initial briefing is not his primary location. It's a diversion. Bradford blinked in surprise. How do you know? Because Havoc is both deeply paranoid and exceptionally methodical, she explained. That compound offers too much visibility, too many potential approach vectors. He would never establish his main operations there. It's designed to attract attention while his true location remains concealed. She zoomed out the map, tracing a line to a secondary valley system. Here, this Wadi network, 3 kilometers northeast, it's more difficult to access, offers superior fields of fire for defense, and multiple escape routes through the mountains. This is where he will actually. Numbers immediately brought up thermal imagery from previous days. There's minimal heat signature in that area during the day. Precisely, Sarah agreed. Now, deck the nighttime thermal readings. He switched to night image. Suddenly the valley illuminated with distinct heat sources. Vehicles, generators, personnel moving. Good heavens, how did our intelligence miss this? Because they were fixated on the obvious target, Sarah stated. Sometimes, the most effective camouflage is giving your enemy precisely what they anticipate seeing, but in the wrong place. For the next hour, they worked tirelessly. Sarah detailed an entirely new strategy. Multi-axis infiltration, carefully staged diversionary elements, and precise timing coordinated with the intricate weather patterns. Every question was answered with a tactical depth that only came from vast experience. Every concern was met with solutions that showcased both inventive thinking and practical feasibility. Williams observed her at work, and eventually drew Bradford aside. Sir, I served in the same combat zone when Phantom was active. Different team, different assignments, but we heard the legend. They claimed Phantom could anticipate enemy movements, as if reading minds. It turns out it wasn't supernatural. It was simply this meticulous level of preparation and analysis. She's extraordinary, Bradford quietly agreed. She is the benchmark. Williams correct. Everything she's doing right now, this is what special operations is supposed to look like. Most of us just don't operate at that caliber. By the time Colonel Moss called for a break, Sarah had transformed their mission from a direct assault with uncertain chances of success into a complex capture operation with minimal risk and the highest probability of apprehending Havoc alive. As people exited for food and rest, Martinez approached Sarah with hesitation. "Chief, may I ask you something?" "Of course. When I watched you at the range, and then here during the attack, you never raised your voice unless it was absolutely necessary. You never tried to prove anything." Why? Sarah considered his question carefully. "Because true capability doesn't require public display. The mission is what truly matters, not my personal ego. If people choose to underestimate me, that's their challenge to overcome, not mine. All I can control is being prepared when it counts most." Martinez nodded slowly. "My sister wants to join special operations. She's afraid she won't be skilled enough, that people won't take her seriously. Tell her that competence is the only credential that ultimately counts," Sarah advised. "Everything else is merely distraction. Master the skill, do the necessary work. The respect will naturally follow, and anyone who fails to recognize that isn't worth worrying about." "Thank you, Chief." Martinez hesitated again. "Also, I recorded a small part of what happened in here, just a few seconds."
Should I delete it? Sarah offered the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her all day. "Keep it. Show your sister. Perhaps it will help her believe it's possible." As Martinez departed, Rodriguez approached. "You managed that entire situation with remarkable composure. Pierce attacked you, Jake ridiculed you, Chen tried to discredit you, and you never became defensive. Becoming defensive wouldn't have altered their opinions," Sarah explained. "Only demonstrating true competence could achieve that, and I was certain the opportunity would arise." "Were you always this composed?" "No." Sarah's expression became distant. "I used to become furious when people questioned me. I felt compelled to constantly prove myself. It took years to grasp that the most effective response to skepticism is simply to be undeniably skilled at what you do." Jake appeared in the doorway, looking hesitant. "Chief, could I speak with you for a moment?" Sarah gestured for him to enter. Rodriguez discreetly left, leaving them alone. Jake struggled to find the right words. "I've been a sniper for 12 years. I've trained with some of the finest marksmen in the military. And that shot you made today at the range, the Barrett at 1,000 meters, first round, no warm-up, an unfamiliar weapon. I couldn't have made that shot. Most of my team couldn't have made that shot. It was flawless, and I dismissed it." "Dismissed you? You lacked context," Sarah offered. "I understand." "No, that's precisely it. I didn't require context. You displayed undeniable capability directly before me, and I chose not to acknowledge it because it didn't align with my preconceived notion." He shook his head. "How do you do it? How do you walk into a room full of individuals like me and simply not let it affect you?" Sarah remained silent for a moment. "Because I've learned that other people's limitations are not my responsibility to fix. I cannot control what they assume about me. I can only control my actions, my performance, and how I treat others. The rest resolves itself. And when it doesn't, then those are not the individuals I need in my life, or on my team. But I do offer everyone a chance to learn and adapt." "You adjusted. That's what truly matters." Jake nodded. "For what it's worth, I would follow you anywhere now. You saved lives today. Mine might have been one of them. I was near that defac, and you achieved it while half the people in this TOC still thought you were just some civilian analyst. Thank you, Morrison. Now get some rest. We have an extensive planning session tomorrow, and I will require everyone to be at their sharpest." After he departed, Sarah stood alone in the quiet, empty TOC, gazing at the tactical display still showcasing her revised operation plan. Her reflection stared back from the dark screen. A small woman in civilian attire, who had just re-engineered an entire military operation through sheer competence and an unwavering resolve. She touched the spot on her shoulder where her jacket had been torn earlier, beneath which her tattoo lay concealed. The seal trident, the Red Squadron eagle, and the date that had irrevocably altered everything. August, the day she had peered through a scope and seen a man's face so clearly she could discern the lines of fear and desperation etched around his eyes. The day she had heard him plead for mercy in fractured English, showing her a photograph of a small girl with dark eyes and a missing front tooth. The day she had made the most agonizing decision of her career to grant mercy, to take the capture shot instead of the kill shot, to wager that humanity could still exist even amidst the brutality of war. And it had succeeded. The intelligence Havoc provided had saved lives, dismantled terror networks, and prevented numerous attacks. But Sarah had learned that mercy was not synonymous with redemption. Some individuals simply refused to change. Some were incapable of change. And Khaled Hassan had starkly demonstrated this by escaping, by taking lives, by betraying every shred of grace he had been afforded. Now, she was back. Not because she to be, but because someone had to stop him. And she was the only one who truly understood him, his behavioral patterns, his thought processes, his combat strategies. The mercy she had shown 2 years prior had afforded her the time to deeply study him, to comprehend him, to know precisely how to track him down once more. This time, however, would be different. This time, mercy would be tempered with justice. Sarah retrieved her satellite communicator, checking for any new messages. None yet, but soon the intelligence network was mobilizing resources, repositioning assets. 4 days remained until the operation. 4 days to meticulously finalize every detail, to prepare her new team, and to ensure absolutely no errors. She looked at her reflection one last time. Phantom was emerging from retirement, and Havoc was about to discover that some specters do not remain buried. Dawn broke with the haunting call to prayer, echoing from remote villages, its mournful melody drifting across the sand and stone. Sarah stood on the base perimeter, watching the sun paint the eastern sky in magnificent shades of amber and crimson. She had been awake since 0300, meticulously reviewing satellite imagery, weather patterns, and enemy movement logs. Her sleep had been short and strategic. 4 hours, just enough to maintain peak operational readiness. Footsteps approached from behind her. Sergeant Williams appeared, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. Figured you'd be out here. You always were an early riser. Sarah accepted the cup. You served in the same theater when I was active. Williams' comment, different area of operations. But yes, Red Squadron's reputation always preceded you. We heard legends about Phantom, the sniper who could anticipate enemy movements, who never missed, who made the impossible shot seem routine. Williams sipped his coffee. We also heard about Operation Sandstorm, about the critical choice you made. Many people admired that decision, while others mistook it for weakness. Those individuals fail to comprehend what true strength entails. Williams gestured towards the rising sun. Taking the easy shot is simple compared to making the ethically correct choice under intense pressure. You extended mercy when you could have delivered violence. That required far more courage than in simply pulling a trigger. They stood in a comfortable silence for a moment. Then Williams asked, "Why did you truly return? You could have remained retired, moved on with your life." Sarah thoughtfully considered the question. Because 17 civilians perished. Because I allowed Havoc to live. Because his daughter, the little girl in that photograph he showed me, is now an orphan in a refugee camp. Because her father chose violence over the path of redemption. Because mercy without accountability is merely enabling. You hold yourself responsible for those deaths. I made a choice. Choices inevitably carry consequences, and those consequences are mine to bear. Sarah drained her coffee. But I can also ensure that no more people die because I once chose mercy. Justice and mercy are not opposing forces. Sometimes justice is how we honor mercy that has been violated. Williams nodded slowly. Your team is fortunate to have you leading this mission. Morrison, Patterson, Pierce. They are capable operators, but they desperately needed this lesson concerning assumptions and respect. You taught them more in a single day than most people learn in years. They were willing to learn. That's what truly matters. Sarah checked her watch. The briefing begins in 30 minutes. We will finalize the operation plan, assign specific roles, establish communication protocols, and then we bring Havoc home. Alive if feasible, but home either way. The briefing room had undergone a complete transformation overnight. Gone were the haphazard arrangements of chairs and the relaxed atmosphere. It now resembled a meticulously organized tactical operations center. Precise seating assignments, updated maps covering every wall, communications equipment thoroughly tested and prepared.
The team assembled with impeccable military punctuality at precisely 0. Sarah stood at the head of the table, no longer in civilian attire. She now wore standard combat utilities, no rank insignia, no name tape, just the understated professionalism of someone who commanded respect without needing accolade. Behind her, the main screen displayed the revised target area, the Wadi system, 3 kilometers northeast of the decoy compound. "Good morning," she began, her voice carrying a quiet yet undeniable authority. "Over the next 3 days, we will train more rigorously than most of you have trained in months, not because you aren't competent, you are, but because this operation allows for zero margin of error. Havoc knows we are coming. He has evaded capture for 3 weeks. He is intelligent, paranoid, and highly driven. We must be even smarter." Jake raised a hand. "Chief, a question about the approach route. You've designated a path through this ravine system, but it's vulnerable to observation from the ridgeline. During daylight, yes," Sarah confirmed. "However, we will be moving at night. During the new moon phase 3 days from now, ambient light will be minimal. Havoc's observation posts are set up for daytime surveillance. At night they depend on thermal optics, which we will bypass using thermal masking equipment and meticulously timed movements." Numbers brought up calculations on his tablet. The temperature difference at night decreases to approximately 15 degrees Celsius. Combined with the thermal gear, we will have perhaps a 2-hour window before atmospheric conditions shift enough to reveal us. "Exactly," Sarah confirmed, "which is why timing is paramount. We insert at 0200 hours, move to our position by 03330, establish overwatch by 0400, and initiate the operation at 0430. Just before morning prayer, when Havoc's guards will be at their lowest state of alertness." Captain Pierce leaned forward. "Intelligence suggests he has 4 rotating guards plus a 2-man counter-sniper team. That's a minimum of 6 hostile combatants, possibly more. 8 total," Sarah corrected. "He also employs 2 support personnel, a communication specialist, and a logistics coordinator. Both are non-combatants, but they will need to be secured during the assault." "How do you know their exact staffing?" Rodriguez inquired. Sarah pulled up a series of surveillance images. They were grainy and long-range, but sufficiently clear. "Because I understand how Havoc operates. He maintains the absolute minimum necessary personnel to reduce his footprint and minimize security vulnerabilities. 8 is his typical cell size, enough for round-the-clock operations, yet small enough to rapidly redeploy if compromised." Williams studied the images intently. "How long have you been conducting this analysis?" "Since I learned of his escape," Sarah replied. 3 weeks of surveillance data, pattern analysis, predictive modeling. I didn't arrive here on a whim, Sergeant. I arrived thoroughly prepared." The briefing continued for another 2 hours, meticulously covering every aspect of the operation: communication protocols, casualty evacuation procedures, rules of engagement, and contingency plans for 17 distinct scenarios. Sarah answered every query with precise detail, demonstrated profound knowledge of both the local terrain and the enemy, and exhibited a level of operational planning that astonished even the most seasoned personnel in the room. By 0800, they transitioned to practical training. The following 3 days evolved into an intensive crash course in operating to Sarah's rigorous standards. She led them through intense live-fire exercises, complex tactical movement drills, and high-pressure emergency response scenarios. She was unyielding but just, pushing everyone to their absolute limits while maintaining an unwavering focus on the mission's specific demands. Jake, a sniper of 12 years, discovered himself learning sophisticated techniques he had never even contemplated. "Chief, you want me to synchronize my breathing pattern with the target's movement rhythm? It creates natural shooting windows," Sarah explained, demonstrating the precise technique. "Most snipers time their shots based on their own respiratory cycle, but if you align your timing with your target's movement pattern, you can anticipate exactly when they will pause, turn, or shift position. It's the crucial difference between merely waiting for an opportunity and actively creating one." Numbers absorbed information like a highly efficient computational engine, his respect for Sarah's ballistic expertise growing with each new lesson. "The way you calculate wind drift, you're not using the standard formulas. I am employing advanced formulas that account for terrain-induced turbulence and atmospheric layering. Standard formulas assume a consistent wind across the bullet's entire flight path. Reality is far more intricate. The bullet traverses multiple atmospheric zones, each possessing distinct wind speeds and directions. You must calculate a weighted average based on the time spent in each zone. Numbers shook his head in sheer astonishment. That's graduate-level fluid dynamics applied to ballistics. It's what ensures bullets strike their target at extreme distances. Sarah replied simply. Even Pierce, who had initially been so defensive and territorial, found herself gaining insights from Sarah's integrated approach to intelligence. You're cross-referencing 3 distinct intelligence streams, simultaneously and weighting them based on the reliability of the source. Single-source intelligence is a recipe for disaster, Sarah stated. Every piece of information carries inherent bias, limitations and potential for deception. By cross-referencing multiple streams and applying statistical confidence weighting, we approach a more accurate operational truth. It's not infallible, but it is superior to relying on any sole source. Rodriguez observed the intense training from the sidelines, meticulously documenting every detail. Chief, permission to ask something personal. Granted. How did you cultivate this extraordinary level of expertise? Most snipers are outstanding marksmen. You, however, are exceptional at marksmanship, tactical deployment, intelligence analysis, leadership, and technical knowledge. It's as if you embody 5 different specialists in one person. Sarah remained silent for a moment, watching Jake refine the synchronized breathing technique. When you spend your life knowing people will doubt you, you are presented with 2 options. She began. Give up, or become utterly undeniable. I chose to be undeniable. That meant surpassing good, surpassing excellent. It meant mastering every single aspect of the craft until there was no justifiable reason to exclude me. She paused thoughtfully. The burden of bias ironically became the ultimate advantage of preparedness. On the second day they conducted a full mission simulation, a comprehensive rehearsal using a replica of Havoc's compound constructed from shipping containers and sandbags. Sarah had the team execute the operation 6 times, each iteration meticulously refining timing, enhancing coordination and pinpointing any vulnerabilities. After the 4th run, Jake called for a break. Chief, I believe we've got it. The team is operating flawlessly. Flawlessly isn't sufficient, Sarah countered. Flawlessly implies you are consciously thinking about your actions. I need this to be automatic, pure muscle memory and deeply ingrained procedure. When adrenaline surges, when something unexpected occurs, when Havoc makes an unforeseen move, you cannot be thinking. You must be reacting from a place of absolute certainty. They ran the simulation 2 more times. By the conclusion of the 6th iteration, the team moved as a single cohesive organism, perfectly coordinated, precise, anticipating each other's actions without requiring verbal communication. Williams pulled Sarah aside after the final run. They're prepared, more prepared than most teams I've observed prior to actual deployment. They're almost ready, Sarah corrected. We're still experiencing a 2-second delay on the assault team's entry after the diversionary explosion. 2 seconds is ample time for Havoc's guards to establish defensive positions. We require simultaneous entry and diversion. You're striving for absolute perfection. I am striving for survival. Havoc's counter-sniper team killed Corporal Jenkins last week. They are highly skilled. If we grant them 2 seconds, another person will die. The colonel had mentioned something that caused several personnel to shift uncomfortably. Life insurance policies for high-risk operators. Specialized coverage for military personnel, particularly those in combat roles, necessitated an understanding of actuarial tables that most brokers never encountered. Premium structures for special operations personnel diverged dramatically from standard policies, with underwriters meticulously evaluating deployment histories, mission classifications and injury records. Companies specializing in tactical professional insurance offered coverage that typical providers wouldn't touch, featuring benefit structures specifically designed around the brutal realities of modern warfare rather than conventional civilian assumption. It served as a stark, sobering reminder that every operation carried inherent risks that could never be fully eradicated, only carefully managed and thoroughly planned for. By the evening of the third day, the team assembled for the final brief. Sarah had them verbally walk through the entire operation, each person meticulously describing their role, their backup procedures, and their contingency responses. The process took 90 minutes. Not a single error, not a single moment of hesitation. Questions? Sarah asked at the conclusion. Specialist Martinez tentatively raised a hand. Chief, what occurs if Havoc attempts to surrender again, as he did with you 2 years ago? The room fell silent. It was the question everyone had been pondering, but no one had dared to ask. Sarah met Martinez's gaze steadily. Then we accept his surrender and take him into custody alive. The mission objective is apprehension, not elimination. If he surrenders, we will honor that. Even after what he's done, Jake asked, incredulous. After the civilians he murdered, especially after what he's done, Sarah clarified. Because that is precisely what distinguishes us from him. We do not abandon our core principles when they become inconvenient. Mercy was the correct path 2 years ago. Justice is the correct path now, but justice implies a trial and accountability, not vengeance. Sarah paused. However, if he poses a lethal threat to any member of this team, the rules of engagement are unambiguous. We will respond with appropriate force. Numbers looked up from his tablet. Chief, there is one scenario we haven't discussed. What if he targets you specifically? If he recognizes Phantom? If he attempts to psychologically exploit your past against you? Then I will manage it. Sarah replied. That is precisely why I am here, because I am the sole individual who... He knows Phantom. He does not know Sarah Chen, and he most certainly does not know what I have learned in the 2 years since our last encounter. The night before the operation, Sarah sat alone in her quarters, cleaning her rifle with the meditative focus of a sacred ritual. Every single component received meticulous attention. The bolt firing pin, trigger assembly, barrel. The weapon was already immaculate, already perfect. This was not about practical necessity, it was about connection, about returning to a familiar rhythm that calmed her mind and readied her spirit. A soft knock at the door. Come in. Captain Pierce entered, appearing unsure of herself. Chief, do you have a moment? Of course. Pierce took a chair, struggling to articulate her thoughts. Finally she said, I wanted to apologize again, not just for my words in the briefing room, but for what I implicitly represent. I spent such a long time battling to be taken seriously as a female intelligence officer, that I inadvertently became the very gatekeeper I once despised. I looked at you and perceived a threat rather than an ally. I understand, Sarah said, continuing her weapon maintenance. A scarcity mentality. When you believe there's only room for one woman at the table, you defend your position instead of working to expand the table for others. Exactly, Pierce admitted, watching Sarah's hands move with practiced accuracy. How did you manage to avoid that trap? By remembering that every barrier I dismantle doesn't solely benefit me, Sarah explained. It empowers every woman who follows after me. The objective isn't to be the only one, it's to ensure I am not the last one. Sarah reassembled the bolt carrier group, with automatic fluid movement. Besides, the success of other women does not diminish my own. Their excellence elevates the standard for everyone. I will remember that. Pierce stood to leave, then turned back. Thank you for granting me an opportunity to improve. Thank you for seizing it. After Pierce departed, Sarah finished with her rifle, then retrieved her challenge coin. SEAL Team 3, Red Squadron, Phantom was engraved on one side. She turned it over in her fingers, feeling the weight of its memories and profound meaning. Tomorrow, Phantom would return to the field. Tomorrow, mercy and justice would finally confront each other. Tomorrow, Havoc would learn that some obligations are eventually collected. 0200 hours. A moonless night. 8 operators moved through the profound darkness like silent specters. An apt description, given their leader's call sign. Sarah led from the front, navigating by night vision and an intimate understanding of terrain she had studied for 3 weeks. Behind her, the team followed in flawless tactical spacing. Each individual was responsible for their assigned sector, weapons prepared but safeties engaged. The temperature had fallen to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, sufficiently cool for thermal masking to be effective. They wore specialized gear designed to disrupt their heat signatures, fragmenting the distinct human outline that thermal optics would typically detect. Combined with meticulous movement timing and strategic route selection, they were virtually invisible. Jake moved second in the formation, providing immediate backup for Sarah. Numbers followed third, carrying the ballistic computer and range-finding equipment. Pierce coordinated from the Tactical Operations Center back at base, feeding real-time intelligence through encrypted communications. Rodriguez commanded the Quick Reaction Force, stationed 2 kilometers away and prepared to respond within 4 minutes if necessary. Williams oversaw the entire operation from the TOC, his vast experience providing critical oversight. They reached the first waypoint at 0245, 15 minutes ahead of schedule. Sarah ordered a brief halt, allowing everyone to hydrate and inspect their equipment. No words were needed. Hand signals efficiently conveyed all necessary information. She keyed her radio, her voice barely above a whisper. Phantom to TOC. Position Alpha secure. Proceeding to Bravo. Copy, Phantom. Williams replied. Weather remains optimal. No enemy movement detected on thermal. The second leg led them through a tight ravine system, with 30-foot walls rising steeply on either side. This was the most perilous segment of their journey. Limited escape routes, high potential for ambush, and no room to maneuver. Yet, it was also the quickest way to reach their objective undetected. Sarah moved with absolute self-assurance, weapon ready, scanning constantly for threats while maintaining a swift pace. Years of operating in precisely this kind of terrain had sharpened her instincts to an almost supernatural degree.
When she suddenly halted, her fist raised, the entire team instantly froze. For 10 silent seconds, nothing stirred. Then, on the ridgeline above, a silhouette momentarily appeared against the backdrop of the stars. It was a guard patrol, precisely where Sarah had predicted it would be, and exactly when she had calculated they would pass. The team remained utterly motionless, their breathing controlled, weapons aimed upward but not firing. The guard continued along the ridge, completely oblivious to the operators 30 feet directly below. After 2 long minutes, Sarah signaled them forward. They resumed their movement. Position Bravo was a small natural depression in the terrain, providing excellent concealment and a clear line of sight towards the target compound. They arrived at 0332, 2 minutes ahead of optimal timing. Sarah had the team establish a temporary holding position, waiting patiently for the perfect moment. At 0358, she gave the signal. They moved into their final position. The assault team stacked silently near the compound entrance. The Overwatch team established firing positions on elevated terrain, and the support element strategically covered all potential escape routes. Sarah settled behind her rifle, the Barrett M82 loaded and ready, its scope adjusted for the 1,200-meter shot she might need to make. Numbers lay base her, with the spotting scope and ballistic computer prepared to provide corrections should conditions shift. All elements, radio check, Sarah whispered. One by one, each team member confirmed their position and readiness. Phantom to all elements, we are green for operation. Execute on my mark. She paused, her gaze fixed on the compound through her scope. Mark in 3, 2, 1, execute. The diversionary explosion illuminated the night sky, precisely placed charges detonating at the decoy compound 3 kilometers away. Exactly as planned, guards at Havoc's actual location turned towards the sound and light, their attention diverted for critical seconds. The assault team breached the entrance simultaneously, perfect timing, without the slightest 2-second delay. Jake led the entry, his movements fluid and seamless from hundreds of hours of practice. They surged through the compound like a deadly current, clearing rooms with lethal efficiency. Contact left, someone called. Gunfire erupted in short, controlled bursts. Then silence. 2 guards neutralized. Non-lethal force proceeding. Sarah kept her eye pressed to the scope, tracking movement through the compound's window. There, Havoc, moving towards the rear exit, exactly as she had predicted. He carried a weapon, but he wasn't engaging. He was running. Havoc is escaping through the back entrance, Sarah reported. Vector 09Z, moving to intercept position Delta. Jake's team flowed efficiently through the compound, securing the remaining personnel without firing additional shots. The enemy counter-sniper team had been caught entirely by surprise, neutralized before they could even establish defensive positions. The support personnel surrendered immediately, hands raised, offering no resistance. But Havoc was on the run, sprinting through the Wadi system towards his pre-planned escape route. Sarah had known he would have one. She had spent 3 weeks identifying every conceivable exit path, every contingency position, every potential backup plan. She and Numbers rapidly repositioned, moving 300 meters to an elevated vantage point that perfectly overlooked Havoc's escape corridor. They settled into position within 90 seconds, fast enough to still have the shot, yet careful enough to maintain absolute accuracy. Through the scope, Sarah could see him clearly now, running hard, a weapon clutched to his chest, repeatedly glancing back over his shoulder, fear palpable in his every movement. He knew Phantom was out here somewhere. He just didn't know precisely where. Range 11380 meters. Numbers quietly called out. Wind 5 knots, left to right. Temperature 66 degrees. Humidity 42%. Sarah made minuscule adjustments to her scope, automatically calculating the ballistic solution. Years of experience flawlessly converted complex data into precise mechanical movements. I have the shot. Clear to engage. Williams confirmed over the radio. Sarah's finger moved to the trigger, taking up the slack. Perfect sight picture, perfectly controlled breathing, flawless body position. The shot was there, clean, certain and lethal, if she chose it to be. And in that crucial moment, through the scope, magnified enough to reveal extraordinary detail, she saw something that made her pause. Havoc stumbled, fell, and in his fall, his weapon clattered onto the rocks out of his reach. He looked back towards the compound, sheer terror etched onto his face. Then he looked directly towards Sarah's position. He couldn't see her, but he knew she was there, somewhere, and slowly raised his hands. Phantom, he called out, his English voice carrying across the distance. Phantom, I know you're there. I surrender. Please. Like before, I surrender. Sarah's crosshairs remained perfectly steady on his chest. One decisive squeeze, one swift trigger pull, and it would be justice for 17 civilians. Accountability for mercy betrayed, resolution for 2 years of knowing her choice had led to further death. The air hummed with an agonizing tension, a silent deliberation that held the fate of a man in the balance. Every eye in the distant TOC was fixed on the tactical display, awaiting her decision. Phantom, Numbers' quiet voice came over her comms. Sarah's finger remained on the trigger, unwavering and certain. Through the powerful scope, she could clearly see Havoc's face, older than 2 years ago, more weathered, but undeniably recognizable. The same man who had shown her his daughter's photograph, the same man who had pleaded for mercy, the same man who had then betrayed that very mercy by escaping and taking innocent lives. Do you remember your daughter? Sarah's voice, amplified by the vast desert silence, carried clearly across the distance. Havoc's raised hands trembled visibly. Yes, yes, of course. Do you remember showing me her photograph, asking me to spare you for her sake? I remember, Phantom, I remember. Then you recall that I extended mercy when I could have delivered death. Sarah continued, her voice calm and controlled. I offered you a chance to reclaim your role as a father, to make different decisions, and you squandered that chance. 17 people are dead, including the family in the village that assisted us, that assisted you during the operation. I had no alternative. You always possess a choice, Sarah countered. You chose violence over redemption. You chose to betray the mercy you were given. Sarah slightly adjusted her aim. I should end your life right now. It would be justice for those 17 individuals. For your daughter, who is now an orphan because you chose this path. Havoc's hands remained raised, but his shoulders visibly shook. Then do it. I deserve it. You do deserve it. Sarah agreed, her voice flat. But that is not my decision to make. I granted you mercy once because I believed in the possibility of change. You proved that belief misguided, yet I will not prove myself misguided by abandoning my principles when faced with difficulty. She keyed her radio. All elements. Target is surrendering. I am holding Overwatch. Assault team, move to secure. Jake's team responded instantly, advancing towards Havoc's position with weapons prepared. Within 2 minutes, they had him in custody, hands secured, weapon confiscated. No resistance was offered. Phantom to TOC. Havoc is secure.
0 friendly casualty. All hostile personnel neutralized or in custody. Mission complete. William's voice returned, thick with emotion. Outstanding work, Phantom. Bring everyone home. The exfiltration was flawlessly executed. Smooth, perfectly coordinated, maintaining absolute security through. By 0600 hours, they were back at base. Havoc in detention. The team was intact and unharmed. As the sun ascended, painting the desert in warm golden light, Sarah stood in the debriefing room. Once more, the team, exhausted but triumphant, was assembled. Colonel Moss was present, alongside senior staff from the intelligence section. Chief Chen, Moss began. I have served in the military for 28 years. I have overseen hundreds of operations. What you achieved tonight represents the absolute gold standard for special operations, planning and execution. 0 casualties, all objectives secured, mission success in under 4 hours. Exceptional doesn't even begin to describe it. Jakes, ma'am, if I may, Chief Chen didn't simply lead a successful operation. She transformed this entire team. 3 days ago, we were capable operators with poor attitudes and misguided assumptions. Today, we are better operators and better individuals because of what she imparted to us. He looked at Sarah. Thank you, Chief, for the profound lesson in humility and the masterclass in excellence. Numbers added. Every calculation, every prediction, every tactical decision, all proven correct. The precision was extraordinary. More than that, the unwavering patience and adherence to principle under such intense pressure was something I will never forget. Pierce approached Sarah directly. Chief, I would like to formally request permission to collaborate with you on future operations, not solely for professional growth, but because serving under your command has been the most illuminating experience of my career. Rodriguez smiled. I believe I speak for everyone when I say we would follow you anywhere. You have established a standard we will be striving to achieve for many years. Sarah accepted the praise with her typical humility. You were all outstanding. You learned, you adapted, and you executed flawlessly. That is a testament to your own capabilities, not merely my leadership. Major Bradford made reference to the intricate legal framework that would eventually lead to the declassification of Sarah's file, a complex procedure involving military attorneys who specialized in classification law. These legal professionals, who navigated the intersection of national security, personnel records, and operational security, occupied a unique and specialized niche within military jurisprudence. Such attorneys handled a diverse range of cases, from security clearance appeals to wrongful discharge proceedings, operating within legal structures that most civilian lawyers never encounter. Advanced legal education programs, focusing on military justice and national security law, prepared specialists for complex cases where standard legal precedent met highly classified information, thereby creating a subspecialty demanding both profound legal expertise and an intimate understanding of intelligence community regulations and procedures. Colonel Moss then called for everyone's attention. Before we conclude, I have an announcement. Solcom has thoroughly reviewed this operation and Chief Chen's exemplary performance. They are formally requesting your permanent reinstatement to active duty, with full rank restoration and your choice of assignment. The room erupted in spontaneous applause. Sarah remained standing, her expression thoughtful. Chief, Moss gently prompted. Thank you, ma'am. I deeply appreciate the offer. I will need to consider it very carefully. Of course, take all the time you require, Moss replied, smiling. Though I suspect everyone in this room would be thrilled to serve alongside you again. The team gradually dispersed, heading for food, much-needed sleep, and the administrative tasks that followed every operation. Sarah remained behind, gazing at the tactical maps, still displayed on the walls of the now empty briefing room, a space that had been the epicenter of such profound transformation over the preceding 4 days. Williams approached quietly. You're not going to accept the reinstatement, are you? I don't know yet, Sarah admitted. Part of me desires to. The part that recalls why I joined in the first place. To serve, to protect, to effect positive change. And the other part remembers precisely why I departed. The immense personal cost, the heavy emotional burden. Seeing Havoc's face through that scope tonight, being compelled to make that agonizing choice once more, she shook her head wearily. I don't know if I want to continue making those decisions. For what it's worth, you made the correct choice both times. Mercy first, then justice. That is the fundamental difference between true warriors and mere killers. Perhaps. Sarah retrieved her challenge coin, turning it over in her finger. Or perhaps I am simply weary of having to be perfect just to be accepted. Weary of knowing that a single misstep will be amplified into definitive proof that I never belonged in the first place. You have proven you belong 1,000 times over. To this team, yes, but there will always be another Jake, another Pierce, another room filled with skeptics, and I will be forced to prove myself all over again. She pocketed the coin. Perhaps that is the real question. Do I wish to continue fighting that particular battle? Before Williams could respond, Lieutenant Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. Chief, apologies for the interruption. There is something you need to see. Intelligence has just flagged something highly unusual. Sarah followed Rodriguez to the intelligence section, where Captain Pierce was already hunched over a computer terminal, her brow furrowed in concentration. Chief, take a look at this. A new high-value target identified by the intelligence fusion cell this morning. The screen displayed a photograph of a woman, approximately Sarah's age. She had a similar build, with dark hair pulled back. Her eyes were what truly commanded attention, calculating, intense, and unmistakably dangerous. Codename Wraith, Pierce continued. Female special operations background, trained in Russia, extensive experience in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Sniper specialty. Sarah leaned closer, intently studying the image. What is her operational signature? That's precisely what concerns me, Pierce replied, pulling up a map that highlighted 6 incident locations over the past 6 months. She is systematically targeting Allied sniper teams. 3 teams neutralized, resulting in 9 total casualties, all of them highly skilled operators. The pattern strongly indicates she is actively hunting specific targets. Hunting the best, Sarah said quietly, a grim recognition dawning in her eyes. Exactly. And Chief, Pierce continued, pulling up another screen. This one displayed an intercepted communication log. This was picked up 2 hours ago, encrypted, but our analysts successfully decrypted it. It's a message sent to known insurgent networks. She highlighted a single line, Phantom has returned, target confirmed. A sudden chill permeated the room. Williams, who had followed them in, stepped closer. She knows you were involved in this operation. How? Either someone informed her, or she possesses access to intelligence that revealed Phantom's participation. Sarah mused, studying the communication log. Regardless, she is aware I am active once more, and if her modus operandi is targeting the most skilled snipers, then you're on her list, Pierce finished grimly. Possibly at the very top. Rodriguez quickly cross-referenced additional intelligence feeds. Chief, there's more. She was last tracked near a refugee camp in Syria, the same camp where she trailed off, verifying the data, where Havoc's daughter is currently residing. Sarah's expression hardened into a steel-like resolve. She's using the girl as bait to lure me out. The weight of this new terrifying revelation settled heavily upon them. The conversation, once about strategy, now became intensely personal. A direct threat to Sarah, and the fragile peace she sought. The room shifted, recognizing the profound gravity of the situation. The world's most dangerous female sniper now had her sights set on Phantom. The stakes had just been impossibly raised. We can dispatch an extraction team, Bradford offered, having joined the group. Retrieve the child to safety, eliminate the bait from her equation. If we send a team, Wraith will know and simply vanish, Sarah stated, her mind already racing through tactical possibilities. She will merely await another opportunity, another target. The threat doesn't disappear, it is merely postponed. So, what is your recommendation? Sarah remained silent for an extended moment, meticulously weighing all options, and their potential consequences. Finally, she spoke. I go, alone, or with a very small team. We secure the child and force Wraith into an engagement on our terms. That is precisely what she wants, Williams protested. You would be walking directly into a trap. Walking into a trap I know exists, with preparation and planning, is different from blindly walking into an ambush. Sarah clarified. She looked at the map, rapidly calculating distances, optimal timing, and potential approach vectors. Besides, Wraith might believe she is the hunter, but she has never faced Phantom on ground that I have prepared. Colonel Moss, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. If you are serious about this, you will have my full support. Team, resources, intelligence, whatever you require. Thank you, ma'am, but I need to deliberate on this carefully. This isn't merely about neutralizing a single threat. It's about discerning the kind of operator I intend to be moving forward. Moss nodded. Take the knife. Your decision can wait until morning. She paused. For what it's worth, whatever you ultimately choose, you have already made an indelible impact here that will endure long after your departure. These operators, this entire base, will remember the lessons you taught us about respect, competence, and unwavering principle under duress. After everyone else had left, Sarah stood alone in the intelligence section, her gaze fixed on Wraith's photograph. The woman stared back from the screen, confident, immensely skilled, and undeniably dangerous. She was a truly formidable adversary, perhaps the first genuinely worthy opponent Sarah had ever faced, because Wraith comprehended the game at precisely the same sophisticated level as Sarah did. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. Chen. Phantom. The voice was distinctly female, accented with Eastern European, possibly Russian, inflections. I have been searching for you. Sarah maintained a neutral tone. Wraith, I presume. They say you are the best. I need to know if that is true. Walk away. This does not have to occur, but it will. A brief pause. I respect you, Phantom. Your reputation is well earned, but reputation is not reality until it is rigorously tested, and I am that test. You are using an innocent child as bait, Sarah countered. That is not testing skill, that is exploitation. The girl is safe for now, but if you wish her to remain so, you will come alone. No backup, no support, no team, just you and me, the way it should be. The two foremost in the world, proving which one truly merits the title. And if I do not come, then I will continue my hunt. Your team, your friends, your former squad mates, everyone you have ever served with will become a target until you finally confront me. Or I could simply harm the girl and compel you to endure that consequence, just as you have endured Havoc's betrayal. The voice hardened with menace. Choose, Phantom. Face me with honor, or witness everyone around you suffer for your cowardice. The line went dead. Sarah stood in the deepening silence, the phone still pressed to her ear, her mind racing through countless scenarios and probabilities. Wraith was not bluffing. The threat was real, credible, and immediate. To walk away now meant the people she cared about would perish. To go alone meant her own likely death. To go with the full team meant Wraith would vanish, only to strike another day. Or option 4, go prepared, go intelligently, and conclude this on terms that upheld both principle and pragmatism. She brought up the tactical display, commencing the meticulous marking of positions around the refugee camp, approach vectors, fallback locations, overwatch point. Her mind smoothly shifted into full planning mode, the very mode that had earned her the name Phantom, that had preserved lives on dozens of operations, that had transformed a team of skeptics into ardent believers in just 4 days. Jake discovered her there 2 hours later, still immersed in planning. Chief, it's nearly midnight. You should get some rest. I can't. I need to finalize this. He looked at the screen, immediately recognizing what he was seeing. You're planning an operation against Wraith. I am planning to protect people I care about and to stop a threat that will not cease on its own. Let us assist you. The team is ready. After everything you've taught us, we are prepared for anything. Sarah turned to face Morrison. 3 days ago, you called me sweetheart, and told me I didn't belong here. Today you are volunteering to walk into a known trap with me. That represents remarkable growth. But this particular fight is not yours. Yes, it is, Jake asserted, because you made us part of something far greater than ourselves. You showed us what true excellence looks like, what genuine principle means. We are not going to let you face this alone. Jake stood straighter, his resolve clear. Furthermore, you taught us that true strength isn't just about not needing help. It's about recognizing when to accept it. You demonstrated that by accepting our apologies, by granting us opportunities to learn and grow, by entrusting us with this operation even after our initial treatment of you. He managed a small smile. Allow us to be part of your team once more, not because you require us, but because we need to stand with you. Sarah studied him for a prolonged moment, then she slowly nodded. All right, but this differs significantly from Havoc. Wraith operates at our level, perhaps even higher. The margin for error is zero. Everyone who participates must comprehend that fully. We understand. When do we depart? Tomorrow night. We will require the entire day for thorough preparation. Sarah returned to the planning display. Retrieve numbers Pierce and Rodriguez. Wake them if necessary. We have 16 hours to devise an operation that will decide whether Phantom's legend concludes or expands. Jake moved to depart, then paused. Chief, for what it's worth, your legend is already cemented. You have nothing left to prove. This isn't about proving anything. It's about safeguarding people and neutralizing a tangible threat. Sarah's expression softened slightly. But thank you for saying that. Now go. We have crucial work ahead. As Jake exited, Sarah turned back to the display. The photograph of Wraith still occupied a corner of the screen. Calculating eyes, a confident expression, the look of someone who had never known defeat. Sarah retrieved her challenge coin once more, feeling its familiar weight. 2 years prior, she had retired because she could not unsee Havoc's face, could not unhear his desperate plea for mercy. Tonight she had again seen his face through a scope, and made the same profound choice. Mercy balanced with justice, principles maintained under immense pressure. But Wraith presented a different challenge. Not a moral dilemma, but a purely tactical one. Not a test of core values but a brutal test of skill. Precisely the kind of challenge Sarah had dedicated her entire career to preparing for. She closed her hand around the coin, feeling the engraving press into her palm. Phantom was preparing for a hunt, and this time, the ghost would need to be swifter, more cunning, and more proficient than ever before. Because some confrontations were not about mercy or justice. Some confrontations were purely about survival. And in the silent desert night, as Sarah finalized her meticulous plans for the operation that would determine everything, she allowed herself a faint, private smile. They had once laughed at the female SEAL sniper. They had eventually learned to profoundly respect her. Now the entire world was about to discover why true legends never genuinely retire. They merely await the opportune moment to remind everyone why the legend exists in the first place. The screen flickered with final updates, team assignments, equipment manifests, intricate timeline coordination, 16 hours to prepare, 16 hours until everything irrevocably changed. Sarah's fingers glided across the keyboard, meticulously finalizing details with the same unwavering precision she applied to every facet of her craft. Some missions do not conclude with the pull of a trigger, she reflected, her thoughts drifting to Havoc's daughter, to the young girl who would soon find herself trapped in the deadly crossfire between two of the world's most formidable snipers. Some missions reverberate through time, forging consequences and connections that endure for years, and some missions fundamentally redefine everything that follows. Tomorrow night, within a refugee camp, where the delicate balance of mercy and justice converged with innocence and imminent danger, Phantom would confront the single adversary who truly comprehended her game. Only one paramount question remained. When two legends inevitably collided, when the absolute best faced the best, when unwavering principle met harsh pragmatism on blood-soaked ground, who would still be standing when the dawn ultimately broke? Sarah saved her work, diligently backed up the files, and finally permitted herself to step away from the planning table. 16 hours until deployment, time to rest, to prepare, to embody Phantom one final time. Because some ghosts do not merely haunt, they actively hunt, and the hunt was now set to begin.